Did you know that you can sell your property and continue to earn income on it? If you're a real estate investor and you need to sell one of your investment properties, you might want to think about this option so that you can continue to make money on the property after it's gone. Hey, everybody, welcome to Real Estate Revenue. I'm Paul Airy, and I am sitting in my truck in Central Texas, and you might hear a little background noise. That's because it's over 100 degrees outside, and I really can't roll the windows down. I need to keep them up with the air conditioner on. So if there's a little bit extra noise, sorry about that, but it's incredibly hot. So rather than sit here and be very uncomfortable, I'm going to leave the air conditioner on and we'll just get around the noise. Now, everyone talks about doing creative financing, and when you're buying properties, trying to ask the seller to finance part of the property or all of the property. What you don't hear people talk about is when you go to sell the property, why you would want to offer seller financing. Most people think of seller financing as one of those things that people really don't want to offer on a property. But there are some advantages to doing it, and some people love to do it, and you might want to do it too when you go to sell. Now, when you buy a property, if you ever bought properties using seller financing, I have, and it makes a difficult deal easier. It doesn't typically affect your credit rating because most people, when they do a seller financing deal, they don't go report your name as having a new debt. That they just don't bother with it. And it can speed up the transaction process. Now, I'll give you a little example of how it makes a difficult deal easier. One is an RV park. I brokered an RV park, a couple of RV park deals, and sometimes the lenders don't really like RV parks. Now, the buyer on this one park, he had one of those lenders, and he didn't quite want to lend enough, and the buyer didn't have quite enough down payment to make up the difference. So we got the seller to do a seller financing deal, and it made that difficult deal easier, and we got it done, and it was a successful deal. So when it comes to selling your property, why not offer seller financing? There are 5 reasons you might want to think about doing that. Number 1 is you can continue to earn income on your investment property, even after it's sold. You're not going to get the rent anymore, but you're going to get a loan payment. Now, it's not going to be as much as the rent payment you're getting every month, but you're also not going to have the expenses or any kind of responsibility at all on that property from then on. Number 2, you're financing equity and profit with interest on top of it. So you're making even more profit on the property. Now, it's spread out over a few years, but you're making more money on that property by selling it with seller financing. So if you don't need that cash up front, do the seller financing deal and make more money. And that leads us to reason number 3. You're spreading the taxes out over the term of the loan. When you sell your property and you make a profit, you're going to have to pay some taxes on it, unless you do a 1031 exchange, which takes care of that tax bill, or you do seller financing and it spreads it out over several years. A lot of people don't want to sell their property because there's so much profit coming their way that they don't want to have to pay the tax bill on it. So if you seller finance a big chunk of that purchase price, you're going to spread those taxes out over the term of the loan, which may be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, however much you want to make it, whatever term you want to decide to use or offer. And the 4th reason to offer seller financing is you can make it more likely to get a higher purchase price. I recently saw a property in a tourist town where it was an old house turned into a retail store, and they were selling souvenirs and knickknacks, and this property was leased to this tenant that had this business, and the owner wanted to sell it. And what they did was they offered seller financing if the buyer would pay full price. And you can do that, and that's a very effective way to get a higher price on your property. Because if you offer seller financing, it makes it so much easier for the buyer to get the property. They don't have to go through the lending process. They don't have to pay for appraisals if they don't want to. And they don't have to, I don't suggest skipping a survey, but you could waive the survey. Appraisals on a commercial property are pretty expensive. They're $3,000 to $4,000. So you can save a chunk of money there too. The fifth reason you want to offer seller financing is that you're creating another asset for yourself. That note on that property is an asset. It's something that you can sell. You can borrow against it in some cases. And it's something that down the road, if you needed cash, you could sell that to a note investor. There is a network of people out there that invest in notes who would be willing to buy your note. If it's not in default, not if it's a performing note, you can get a pretty decent amount of money for it. Now the big objection everyone always has is, here's what I always hear: well, what if they quit making their payments? What if they default on the loan? Then what do I do? Well, I wouldn't worry about it. I don't care if they default on the loan, because if they do, you have some options. First of all, that note is secured with the property that they bought. Don't ever sell and do owner financing and not secure that note with the property that they just bought. Don't let them secure that note with something else. Make it the property that you're selling. When they default on the note, you got a couple of options. You could call them up and say, look, you're behind on your payments. Let's work something out, work out a payment plan and get you caught up. Or you can do a foreclosure, which is a long, lengthy, expensive process that you have to go through the courts for. You have to have an attorney, and it's going to cost you some money and some time. The alternative, and it's going to hurt their credit. Now, the alternative is you can call up this buyer and say, look, you're behind on the payments. We're getting to the point where we're going to have to do a foreclosure. I don't want to do a foreclosure. It's going to hurt your credit. It's going to be time consuming and expensive. Let's just do a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And what that means is they're going to sign the deed back over to you. You're going to have a closing on the property, and you're basically buying the property back for the note. You will have to have an attorney to go through this with them. And usually the title companies, are going to have an attorney. You can probably do all that at the title company. Or if you have a real estate attorney, which I strongly suggest, you can have them take care of it. But you can do that and avoid all that unpleasant mess for the buyer and for you, and make it easy and just get the property back. Now, I had a mentor one time who bought 500 acres, paid $1 million for it. It was a long time ago, so that sounds kind of cheap for 500 acres, but at the time it was not. Now, he sold that property within a year, I would say, after he bought it. He sold it for $4 million. People wanted to develop it. They paid him $3 million in cash, and he gave them $1 million note. He seller financed $1 million for him. So he got 3 times his purchase price back out of it in cash. And he got a note for $1 million that he was earning a lot of income on. Now, after about a year or so, they defaulted on the note, gave him back the land. So he ended up with $3 million in cash and his land back that he only paid $1 million for. So basically, he got $3 million for free. He did not care one bit that they defaulted on that loan. Didn't bother him at all. He just took that because he was a real estate developer. He took that land and he did something else with it. And he used his $3 million to do it. So he doesn't have to give that money back. That's his to keep. So those are some reasons. If you want to sell your property, consider seller financing, consider what it can do for you, how it can make the property sale easier, a lot more pleasant, and still earn income on the property. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. So that's about it for this time. I'll see you next time on Real Estate Revenue.